What is the best thing you've ever found? This is a question every archaeologist gets asked, almost every day. So I thought I'd bring in some of my favorite finds. Now, to be honest, some of my finds are interesting enough that they've made it into museum archives. Others, however, haven't made the cut just yet, so I thought I'd bring them in for a little show and tell. Sure, some of them look amazing, some don't, but you can only understand how incredible these artifacts are if you know the full story. So, where do we start? A hand axe? A jar full of 10,000-year-old hazelnuts? Let's dig in. Hey dirt nerds, my name is Giselle Király and welcome to the Archaeologist Notebook. In this video, you're getting details from actual pages from my actual notebook, starting with this incredible find. This is the head of a prehistoric hand axe from the Neolithic period, between 4,000 and 6,000 years ago. And don't worry, it's off to an archive. But before it goes there, I really want to tell you about it. I was working in the center of England and was walking from one part of site to another when I noticed a funny shaped rock stuck in the dried up mud. It wasn't in an archaeological feature or near anything. It was genuinely just in the natural soil, but it was broken off. We had a machine digging some large slots on site, and I have a feeling that in the process of slinging soil around and putting it in large spoil heaps, it must have either flung out or rolled down one of those heaps. Nevertheless, it caught my eye. Now, it wasn't lying perfectly like an axe head, so I didn't immediately know what it was, but it was a nice bit of smooth rock. I picked it up and was caught off guard. This was shaped by a human. As it turns out, one of my friends at a company I used to work at had actually found a hand axe this same way, and it always stuck with me. Well, it's my turn now. But I looked at the stone for a while, and you see how it sort of has a greenish hue? That isn't a stone type that's found in the Midlands. So where did it come from? Why was it in the Midlands? Well, with a bit of research, I learned all about where this multi-purpose tool came from, and even how it was made. It was made from a special type of stone called greenstone volcanic tuff. It's quarried in the north of England in this beautiful place called the Lake District. Volcanic tuff sounds interesting, right? Well, it's a type of volcanic rock formed from compacted volcanic ash. It's fine-grained and sturdy, which was important for Neolithic people. And it's greenish colored. So, to get this highly valued stone, Neolithic people would actually climb up these impossibly steep hillsides and chop into the rock. They would get a chunk of this stone, shape it, refine it, and eventually polish it on other large stones, which is why this is so smooth. I actually went to that valley beneath this prehistoric quarry in the Lake District, just to see if I could find any axe fragments. But no luck, so it's extra special that I came across one nearly 200 miles away. So how did it end up so far from the quarry? Likely a Neolithic trade route. What do you think you would trade to acquire such a lovely hand axe? Let me know in the comments. Next up, a little collection of clay pipes. These guys I found while mudlarking around a burial dig site in the south of England, where convict burials are slowly eroding into the sea. You want to know more? Let's get ourselves down to the south of England, to a little tidal island called Rat Island. It's Ministry of Defence property, so don't think about going there without permission. And to be honest, despite having permission, the Coast Guard have run sirens and checked in on dig teams more than once. The dig crew is made up of archaeologists, military police, and veterans. It's part training, part recovery for archaeological importance, and uniquely, it's partly a mental health program for veterans. If that's something you'd like to know more about, I've been a part of the program as an archaeologist for quite a few years now, and I would genuinely love to talk about it, so please let me know in the comments. The dig is cool, not just because of who makes up the crew, but because of how we dig. It's an island of burials that are eroding, which means those burials are eroding from feet to hips to shoulders to head. We safely dig into the edge of the island. We might be able to rescue up to the hip of an individual one year, and then the rest of that person the following year. So site photography and excellent record keeping are mandatory to keeping things organized. So who were these people? I did say convicts, didn't I? And why have I found so many clay pipes? Well, back in the 18th and 19th century, massive prison hulks were stationed in Portsmouth Harbour, cramming hundreds of convicts on board. We're talking up to 20 people in a cell meant for 2 to 4 people. Convicts were malnourished, doing backbreaking work on shore, and then coming back to the hulk to sleep. Mutiny and escape attempts were made, typically ending up with longer sentences or being put in irons. And it's not all men either, as we might expect. Women and children were on board prison hulks as well. And of course, malnourishment and overworking can often mean only one thing: death. But where do convicts get buried? Maps from 1858 identify parts of the island as a convict burial ground, confirming local legends that the island was used to inter inmates. And thanks to excavations since 2014, we can confirm that. Severe storms hit the island and began eroding the coastline, revealing human remains. Now, after digging there for multiple years, we've learned quite a bit about the people themselves. They were buried in coffins made of elm, so proper burials. We found wood and coffin nails while we've dug. We've also found a craniotomy on one of the skulls, hinting at medical examination, potentially that prisoners were autopsied, maybe as a medical experiment or practice for a student. I don't really like that idea of experimenting on convicts, but something I do like is that we found skulls where there were big circular notches in the teeth. And those notches teach us which side of the mouth an individual liked to smoke a pipe from. They would smoke these little clay pipes so often, the pipe stem, this part here, would actually start to shave away at the tooth, leaving a circular hole. And we found clay pipes within graves. These are definitely getting saved and archived. And ones outside of graves, I've got the ones that aren't good enough for the archive. So let's have a look at them. You have a bowl, you have a heel or a spur, and you have a hollow stem. These were single use. You'd stuff tobacco here, you'd light it, and then you'd smoke through this end. People from all classes would use pipes, but longer stems were more difficult to produce, so those were for higher classes who could afford them. There are bits of pipe bowl and pipe stem all around Rat Island, and let me show you a cool thing about them if you find some while mudlarking somewhere yourself. You can actually date them. It's a little debated as to how accurate it is. It's always best if you have a big sample size, and you should consider the bowl shape, any stamps, the angle of the bowl, and the stem, and just all of those different things. But if we just look at the pipe stem and we take some calipers and we measure that hole there in the middle, we can plug that measurement into a regression formula and it'll pop out a date. So this one here, this one's likely from around 1740 to 1760. How cool is that? Up next, this jar, filled with mysterious things. What are they? Well, they're hazelnut shells from the Mesolithic. That's at the end of the last ice age, 11,000 years ago. And don't they look fresh? It honestly blows my mind every time I see them. These are from a site in North Yorkshire. Have you ever heard of Starcar? Well, this is from the same area. And if you haven't heard of Starcar, I reckon we should be doing a little video about that. There used to be a lake in North Yorkshire called Paleo Lake Flixton. Hunter-gatherer groups would live around the edges of the lake, which was great for fishing, and they would live in wooden huts with reeds or skins on top. They could walk around the marshy edges using boardwalk systems and make trips to the islands towards the center of the lake. Now, that lake isn't there anymore. You can only see farmland. But under the farmland are layers of wet peat, indicating exactly where that lake used to be. Layers of leaves and twigs fell into the lake thousands of years ago, building up and decaying over time, and sort of sealing in the lake bed and the important settlement edges of the lake. Thousands of years later, and us archaeologists come by to dig through that peat. We carefully peel back layer after layer, stumbling upon archaeological finds along the way. And they're in perfect condition. The peat is such a good seal that it actually seals out oxygen, meaning that any artifacts we come across haven't been destroyed by bacteria or decomposition. Wood, bone, and even birch bark are preserved so well that they look exactly as they did 11,000 years ago. That's mental, isn't it? So let's take a little look into this jar here. These are hazelnut shells, and so many have been found that, we're talking thousands and thousands so far. They all won't be going in an archive. Some start ending up on the spoil heap. All you have to do is fill the jar with water, and you're back to the same waterlogged conditions you found them in. So why so many hazelnut shells? Well, the Mesolithic people loved these little energy-dense nuts. They would roast them over a fire so they were easier to crack open. They're even a little bit charred. Hazelnuts were vital, especially because they could be stored and eaten all winter long when berries and fresh food were harder to come by. But could we eat them now? I'm not so sure I would. Charred, soggy, no thanks. I'll stick to my Nutella instead. Okay, let's go back just a bit further than those hazelnuts, to the Ice Age. At a minimum of 14,000 years ago, an icon of the prehistoric world roamed these very lands. Can you guess what it is? Take a look at this artifact. Any ideas? This is a portion of a mammoth tusk. It's an incredible piece of history, but it also raises a massive question. How is it that archaeologists come across Ice Age remains in the modern world? To understand that, you have to look at a specific side of the profession, commercial archaeology, also called cultural resource management. This involves year-round archaeological monitoring alongside construction companies before houses, quarries, or roads are built. If development is happening where history might be uncovered or destroyed, an archaeologist is on site to find it. Imagine standing on a busy development site, dressed in high-vis, a hard hat, and a pair of highly stylish safety glasses. Amidst the heavy machinery, wet clay, or sandy wind, these are the exact environments where deep history suddenly resurfaces. Like this bit of tusk right here. So how common is it? Well, sand and gravel quarries are some of the most common places in England to encounter Ice Age remains. Thousands of years ago, massive rivers fueled by melting glaciers rushed through valleys. When a mammoth died, the currents washed its bones and dense ivory tusks downstream, eventually burying them deep within river silt and gravel beds. This cold, oxygen-poor mud acted as a time capsule, protecting the material for millennia. Today, quarries dig directly into these ancient river terraces, exposing the final remnants of prehistoric titans. Mammoths are really fascinating, and they were incredibly resilient. They actually fled what is now the UK during the height of the glacial freeze, returning thousands of years later during a warmer phase. Why did they vanish? They must have been killed off by hunters, right? Wrong. It was because of climate change. There was plenty of it back then, and as the climate warmed, open grasslands were replaced with dense forests, and the favored food option of grassland became limited. So they simply died out. Let's take a closer look at this piece of tusk. It isn't in very good condition. Thousands of years buried underground have taken a massive toll. As you can see, this specific fragment is in pretty rough shape. It's incredibly fragile and actively starting to crumble and flake apart now that it's out of the ground. When tusk ivory dries out, it tends to delaminate pretty rapidly. Now, even though it's literally falling apart, there's something absolutely mind-blowing about holding a physical piece of an animal that walked this exact ground over 14,000 years ago. It makes you think about what else is buried right beneath our feet. Have you ever come across an object or a piece of history that felt unimaginably old to hold? Let me know in the comments. Speaking of things buried right beneath our feet, most of what an archaeologist finds on a site isn't treasure or a pristine museum piece. It's trash, but really old trash. And a significant amount of that trash is pottery. It's the bread and butter of archaeology, thanks to the fact that it's pretty indestructible. Sure, it breaks easily and would get thrown away, but those tiny fragments, or sherds, survive very well in soil. And if you know what to look for, a single handful of broken pottery can tell you what people were eating, what sort of technology they had, and even how rich people were. So let's look at a few typical fragments you'll come across on a British dig, starting with the Iron Age. Lasting for approximately 800 years, the Iron Age was a turbulent time, filled with hill forts, tribes, farming communities, and eventually the new Roman neighbors. And the pottery reflects that turbulence. The pottery was handmade and thick, no pottery wheels yet, and fired using open fire techniques, like a bonfire, for example. If you look closely at the edges, you can sometimes see white specks. This is called temper. It's crushed shell, sand, or even burnt flint that the pottery deliberately mixed into the clay. Without it, the pot would crack and explode when it was heated. It's basic, but it did the job, and it cooked the stews and porridge that sustained tribal communities for hundreds of years. But look closely. Can you see that decoration? The pottery is actually scored, probably with something as simple as a twig. You might be thinking this is only decoration, but actually it was probably functional as well, improving the grip on the vessel itself. But this simple form of pottery would start to change in Britain thanks to the arrival of the Romans in 43 CE. This period saw Britain transformed into imperial rule with a new network of paved roads, grid-planned towns, and grand stone villas with mosaic floors and heating. The local potters adopted Roman technology, specifically the fast potter's wheel and kilns. We can find these kilns on dig sites, which is pretty cool. And the result of these new techniques? Pottery that's thinner and pretty uniform. And specialty pottery became more common. For example, there's a specific type of pottery what we call black burnished ware, which would be rubbed with smooth pebbles before it was fired to make a dark but shiny looking surface. And it wasn't just how pottery was made that changed, but why pottery was made. There were now mugs, storage jars, mixing bowls, jugs, and even cheese molds. Now, if you want to know more about cheese through the ages, please let me know in the comments because I really think that should happen. In the nearly 400 years that Romans occupied Britain, they made a lot of changes to the pottery world. And I'm only showing you one style of pottery in a world filled with brilliant color-coded pottery, fancy Samian ware, and interesting little Roman face pots. But don't worry, I'll be making you more videos on those styles soon enough. The thing with history and archaeology is that there is never a straight line of progress. After the Roman administration collapsed in around 410 CE, the big kilns in Britain went cold, and the pottery style shifted drastically yet again. Enter the Saxons. Saxon pottery can be a bit of a shock to the system after looking at Roman uniformity. We go right back to handmade, coil-built pots, fired in backyard pits. It looks similar to the Iron Age stuff. It's dark, it's thick, and it's unrefined, but with a twist. Saxons loved stamping their pottery. If you look at Saxon sherds, they are often covered in geometric patterns made using small wooden stamps, forming little chevrons or circles. Sometimes they used a simple pointed stick to scratch lines into damp clay. It's highly personal, and I really love that about Saxon decoration. This early medieval period, spanning from the 5th to the 11th centuries and defined by the migration of Germanic tribes, as well as the fragmentation of Roman infrastructure, would lead to the eventual rise of the first English kingdoms. And in the pottery world, the fantastic new thing, green glazed pottery. But that's for another video. We covered a lot of ground today, but I have even more finds for you. You can check out the extra artifacts I filmed in a members-only video. There's items from a World War II plane crash, ammonites I found in Mary Anning's hometown, and me debating whether a single Roman coin I found counts as treasure. You can become a channel member by clicking the join button below. I hope you enjoyed this little peek into artifacts from an archaeologist's actual notebook. What should we look at next? More artifacts from Starkar? How about the history of cheese? Or something else? Cast your vote in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And I'll see you in the next one.